Hey, Fogarty. Hey, Tom. That's why we invite Dr. Fogarty. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's, Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. It's as full and as raucous as the Stanford football stadium was last night. So very cool. We know how to pack them in for an important event, and this is an important event, the 15th annual Fogarty Lectureship, Focus on Innovation, a lectureship that was established by the Department of Surgery and the program in Biodesign. And so on behalf of Paul Yock and myself, Tom Crummell, it's really a privilege to welcome you all here. Don't you feel lucky to be here? We established the lectureship 15 years ago for two reasons. One, we wanted to celebrate the historic partnerships between academia, industry, and the venture world that have created the remarkable progress in the medical technology field that we've experienced today. Thursday's my OR day, and as I pointed out to the residents yesterday, there's nothing we use in the operating room that isn't a manufactured device. And so anytime you ask for a catheter, make it a Fogarty, but regardless of what you ask for, someone had to build it, test it, make it work, and get it to your operating room. And so we think that's well worth celebrating. We also take the opportunity to celebrate the extraordinary contributions of Dr. Tom Fogarty that Tom has made throughout his career. This is approaching the 50th anniversary of the balloon catheter. The poster that we put together here depicts Tom Fogarty and Miles Edwards and Edwards Laboratory, and also depicts Mike Mussallem, current Chief Executive Officer at Edwards Lifesciences, and sets the stage for the title of this year's lectureship. Dr. Fogarty's bio is in the booklet. It is really a legendary biography, but high points include the kind of Oscars of innovators, the Lemelson Prize, 2001 inductee into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. That's like Edison and the Wright brothers, folks like that. Again, an opportunity to celebrate 50 years of the iconic balloon catheter, an enduring contribution in the toolbox of every one of us that touches a patient inside the blood vessel system. And Tom, it's hard to believe it's been 15 years, but we're really thrilled. Speaking of 15 years, we have a number of past Fogarty lecturers, including Dr. Fogarty, Dr. Perkins, Paul Yock, Bill Brody, who's here, and Casey McGlynn. So welcome to all the past luminaries. And this year, every year it's hard to imagine we top it, but I think we will. This year's Fogarty Lectureship is going to be delivered by well, it's honorary degree, actually. Mike Mussallem, who's been a lifelong contributor in the Medtech industry. Mike's bio is also in your brochure, but a couple of highlights: a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, and then a virtually 25-year career within the same functional core business, starting at Baxter International in '79, progressing up the food chain in a variety of important responsibilities in manufacturing, engineering, and product development. In '93, Mike was named president of Baxter's Critical Care Division, then Group VP for Baxter's Surgical Group. He then chaired the Asia Pacific Board, and when Edwards Lifesciences was spun off from Baxter in April of 2000, Mike assumed the role of Chairman, Chief Executive Officer, a role that he holds today. I think everyone knows Edwards Lifesciences as a world leader in heart valve technologies, headquartered in SoCal, not far from where the original place was. It's really been a powerhouse, and the kind of really fantastic and ethical contributions that make our work in the hospital and the cath labs not only doable, but truly enabling of the complex treatment of complex heart disease. It was Lowell Edwards, whose picture I put together here on the poster, who worked with Tom on the balloon catheter, the Star Edwards valve. That would also be Edwards, and so a hell of a contribution and a wonderful opportunity on this, the 50th anniversary, to have Mike here. Mike serves not only at Edwards, but is a real leader in the medical device industry. He serves on boards and executive committees of AvaMed, the California Health Institute, and the Orange County Foundation for Innovation. He's a board member at the Schaefer Center for Health Policy and Economics at University of Southern California and the Healthcare Leadership Council, and a trustee of the University of California at Irvine. Former chair and board of directors of both AVAMED and CHI, honorary degree, as I indicated, so doctor is only, in fact, not even a misnomer. Really is a privilege. Mike has put together, I think, a terrific talk and then organized a panel discussion that will follow with Rita Redberg, who's heading this way from the airport, Dave Feinberg, who's here from UCLA, and Tom Fogarty. So with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Mussallem.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Well, thanks so much, Tom. You know, it is a treat for me to be here. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who I know and love, and a lot of big brains, and a lot of people that do things for a living that I have a passion for as well, which is to create incredible medical technology. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story. You know, why was I selected? I think it's because it's the 50th year of the Fogarty catheter. It's not because I was there then and now, but I know people that were there then. But let's get into this a little bit. It's a fun story that I get a chance to be around and relate, at least from my point of view. Here's some of the pictures of way back when. So this is Lowell Edwards. He was an engineer's engineer. 1958. He decided he was going to stop doing what he had done for a career in the paper and pulp industry in Oregon and moved to Southern California and created an artificial heart with all of his know-how. And hooked up with a young surgeon by the name of Albert Starr, who convinced him to do a heart valve. And he switched from having this dream to actually implanting the first heart valve in 2 years, which tells you a little bit about how fast things worked back then. I'm not sure we could even change our mind in 2 years now. But a lot of cool stuff. I look at that clean room and I'm thinking, wow, those were the days. Times have changed. So here's our man, young Tom Fogarty. So Tom Fogarty, he got into soapbox derby when he was very young, and as you might imagine, he was going to make the best soapbox derby car that there ever was. And here he is, the Flying Irishman. After that, it was model airplanes, and he made great model airplanes. As a matter of fact, he sold his model airplanes to his friends and did quite well at that, which was the beginning of his commercial career. And then later on, when he was frustrated with his motor scooter, he created the centrifugal clutch, right? And and I've seen that frustration in Tom before. You may have. Actually, when I think of the Fogarty lecture, I don't think of this distinguished series. I more think of the lecture I get from Fogarty when he gets frustrated. And I've been on the receiving end of more than one Fogarty lecture in the past. Anyway, this is our young man, and so then came the Fogarty catheter. It was incredible. This is my favorite quote from Tom. He says, "Innovation is really a form of insanity. You see things other people don't see, you hear things other people don't hear, and you do things nobody else will do." And I disagree with Tom on a lot of things. On this one, I agree. It is a form of insanity, and I think Tom pretty much proved that. And here it is, the Fogarty catheter. And this was, I don't know if you consider this very simple or very sophisticated, but think about what this led to over time. A list assembled by Boston Consulting Group, in their mind, some of the biggest medical innovations to happen over time. And there's the balloon catheter. And think of all the balloon technology that gets used today that is founded on it. That's very simple but profound principle of balloon catheters. So there we are with our background. Now we're into this interesting subject. So in the US, is the golden age of innovation over? Is it a foregone era? And I sort of grew up in this industry. I have so much passion for this. There is no way that I believe that that's the case. I believe that we're the solution to the healthcare problems that are out there. And as a matter of fact, as I've gone through my career, it was so clear to me that I couldn't even comprehend that somebody would think otherwise. Now, as Tom mentioned, I had the opportunity to be chairman of our industry association in '09, just when the United States decided they were going to reform the healthcare system. And one of the things that they took on as being most important was to bend the cost curve. And so got a letter one day that said, I was invited to come to a meeting in the White House and join a group of distinguished individuals, and the job was to bend the cost curve, and we needed to take $2 trillion out over the next 10 years. And I thought, wow, I've never used trillion in a sentence before. And I'm invited to a meeting, and so this meeting happened in the Roosevelt room of the White House. I was ill-prepared for this. I had my little transcatheter heart valve samples in my pocket and so forth, and when it came to me, I gave them the speech that, you know, I don't know how we do it, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of bright people in medical technology, and we can do it. If you harness our energy, we can be part of the solution. Well, there was another guy a couple of seats down from the president by the name of Peter Orszag. Peter had a more important job than I did in this whole thing. He was head of the Office of Management and Budget, right? The CFO, really, of our nation. Peter had a different attitude about medical technology, and it permeated the administration at that time. I'll read to you some of his quotes. Approximately half of all long-term growth in healthcare spending has been brought about by technological advances. Overall, examples of new therapies for which long-term savings have been clearly demonstrated are few. We don't seem to be getting anything in exchange for the extra costs except more intensive tests and procedures and additional days in the hospital. Who would want any of that if the additional tests and procedures do not actually help promote health? I'd sit there and I'd listen to this and I would go crazy. How could somebody think that? How could that be true? Must be a learned man. And I decided I really needed to open my mind a little bit and think about, could this possibly be true? Because I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. And I don't know whether it's absolutely true or not. Maybe this will be the discussion of some of our panel a little bit later. A little bit more of a contemporary perspective is, hey, anyway, whether that's true or not, medical technology innovation needs to change. It can't be the same anymore. Investment's been declining if we do it the old way. There's a new era that has to be focused on expectations for value and convenience, right? So that makes some sense, right? This focus on medtech better bring value. And we see more and more of that in our news. So when we think about the medtech and the innovation process of medtech, there's a lot of reasons why innovation is maybe slower now than it was 50 years ago. And we'll go through some of the big reasons. I'll walk you through it. Of course, the FDA, right? We know they're evil and they try and keep innovations from happening. We can drill a little bit deeper on that. There's quality issues. In the past, you know, when you introduced a wonderful new innovation, you'd say, wow, look at these patients and how many we helped. Now, often it's, hey, 3 out of 100 patients actually don't get helped. They actually get hurt with this new technology. What are you going to do about that 3 out of 100? So a little different questions, quality challenges. Value-based healthcare is real. Sophisticated buyers saying, how do I know that this is really going to be better for patients broadly? And finally, the new threat and the U.S. has been the leader in medical technology for certainly my whole career, but that's changing, right? We've got a powerhouse coming, especially in China, that said they really want to be the medtech innovators of the world in the future, and they're coming hard. So let's drill a little deeper on that. So I don't know what we think about, you know, we like to complain about FDA. I don't know what we think about performance, but there are fewer PMAs right now, and these are these big changes today than there were in the past. So it declined. Maybe there was a low point, but however it is, it feels like it's at a lower level today. Whether it was in the 40s plus in the past, and now it's around 30 or so that make it through. Why is that? Well, we can speculate a lot of reasons for why that is, but those big breakthroughs are coming less often. What else? There's a bunch of data. This came from the Boston Consulting Group. They helped a lot and provided data that we had a chance to look at as we put this talk together. And it says a few things. One is that the time it takes to get through a PMA process is long. Two is people go to Europe first, and because it is so long, to come to the U.S. And you get lots of conversations by people that are engaged that say it costs a lot to get through the process. It costs a lot. and who has the money to get through this. And I think we all speculate that this is the key reason why medtech investing is slowing down. Because if you add the risk that was always there with the time frames to be able to get through the processes, and what substantial hurdles exist, it's kind of like, gee, maybe there's an easier way to make money if that's what you're about. And so it's caused real pressure on investing in healthcare. And then there's the quality issues, right? So what is this all about? So what's this rise in adverse events, right? It's big, it's real. Now, we're a company that reports our adverse events. Our adverse events look like they're much higher today than they were in the past, not much different than other companies. Well, our people would say we're reporting far more rigorously than we ever reported in the past. There's consequences for not reporting every adverse event. There's more of that going on inside hospitals, so there's more reporting. So is that it? Is it just an artifact of more reporting? There's not really a quality issue? I think there's something to that, but then you have these high-profile quality incidents that happen, right? We hear it, right? It turns into headlines, and we deal with them and on a regular basis, right? Spinal implant recalls, knee implants, infusion pumps, blood glucose tests, hip implants, the recent problem that happened in France with breast implants, very substantial, and that just adds fuel to the fire that says, you know what, there's that industry in general is maybe not cranking out quality products, right? And we get that, and it is a headwind, and it stands in the way of us being as successful as we'd like to be. Now, there was a great piece of work that I like to celebrate and remind people about that happened in 2001, done by Cutler and McClellan, our own Mark McClellan right here from Stanford at one time, who talked about technological change and whether it's worth it, and took an economist's point of view at this medtech world and said, what do we spend and what do we get for that? And they really took it apart, and they took a broader perspective. This is a summary of some of their research. So they said actually, and they studied very specific time frames, how much treatment cost, what was the outcome from those treatments, and then what was the value and what was the net benefit. And they went through this in a very deliberate fashion. And you can see there are a number of great examples where medical technology sincerely added value, right? It moved the needle, and this was done in a highly objective way by some really bright economists. I feel like there was a lot to stand on there. A little bit of our problem in valuing medical technology was also articulated in this piece by Porter, and he talked about sort of carving up the way you measure the medical technology in pieces. And so let's take a look at those. If you think that much medical technology gets used in a specific incident, a specific event, right? There's a procedure that happens. As an outcome of that procedure, you can measure survival and you can measure the degree of health recovery, okay? Just how well does somebody get? You can measure quality of life coming out of it. You can take a broader perspective on that and say, you know what, how about the process of recovery? What if we take a little larger look at that patient and look at their time to recovery and their return to normal activities? And a matter of fact, let's also take a look at some of the things that didn't go so well during that course of care. Some of the diagnostic errors, ineffective care, treatment-related discomfort, go through the list. That should really also go into the value equation. Or, if you really want to think about it broadly, you say, how about the lifetime of care? Do you have a sustainable outcome from this? Is this one that lasts for years? Or is the recovery one that's subject to recurrence, right? Are you going to be back in for more, or are there some other long-term consequences of that therapy? And when you start thinking about it from that perspective, and it's one of the frustrations I think those of us that are innovators think about is, okay, what kind of a time frame do we actually measure the results? And for the most part, the answer historically has been a very small time frame. And we're starting now to stretch it out. Now, instead of just looking at the procedure, right, we're starting to think about the 30 days, right, that follow the procedure. But, okay, and actually, if you're in a hospital system, if you're a provider today, there's more and more incentives, not just to care about the procedure, but to care about the whole 30 days, right? You can feel the system moving in that direction. That can actually be measured, and there's some real strides being made to do that. But where's the measurement come on a long-term basis? Who cares about the really long term? You know, I'd say, well, I think the physician kind of cares, right? They think about that and they care about it, although I don't know that they're financially incented to do anything about it from a long-term perspective. How much skin do they have in the game from a long-term perspective? You'd say the hospital, of course they want to do something good for a long term, but again, they don't have much skin in the game. How about an insurance company? Well, in general, they keep a person in their plan for what, 18 months? Maybe a little more, a little less, something like that. You know, I suppose the government ought to care, right? Ultimately, all these folks are going to end up, we're all going to end up in Medicare someday, so they should care. But the one that really cares the most is the patient, maybe the only one that really cares about this long term. But are they informed enough, are they thoughtful enough to be able to engage in that discussion and help interject their own feelings in that early course of care? Now, what's the popular press have to say about the impact of our work on medicine? Nothing good, right? We're at cover of Time magazine, why medical bills are killing us, right? You go through Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Fiscal Times, right? Soaring healthcare costs pinned on medical devices, right? How often are we looking at these, right? This is the story du jour, and we seem to have a tough time penetrating the din on making that happen. So then there's this other effect, and it seems like I'm piling on all this bad news, but it will evolve from here. But the U.S. has been the leader, right? So here comes China. They actually took it on as a state priority, right? It was part of their 19th strategic plan that they were going to be leaders in medical technology. And they were applying money to it, and now it's starting to move from just government funded to actually moving into the private sector, or I'll call it curiosity-based rather than state-based innovation. And they're going to be able to fund it because it's getting to be a big market. One of the ways that you're an innovator is if your home market is actually pretty good. I think if you don't have a great home market, you probably don't have much incentive to really have the juice to be able to innovate. And we think China's going to be the #2 market by 2020. It's not that big today, but it's growing fast. It's growing at a pace of 3-4 times the rest of the developed economies. And that sort of incentive and that drive means that they're going to be innovators in the future. And I think they're going to start out by taking things that already work and making them for much less and selling them, right? And it'll evolve to something better and better. But you know, it's coming, and it's also sort of another serious impact on those that think about investing in medtech innovation. So if we say, no, it could work, stop the glasses half full stuff. Let's start looking at this from a little more positive point of view. We have one, we're fortunate here at Edwards Lifesciences that we sort of had a chance to live one that was a winner, right? So this was a chance to actually replace a heart valve on a beating heart, right? And there would an approach where a whole heart team would be involved, and there have been thousands, tens of thousands of patients treated. This is probably an old slide at this point to say that it's 50,000 patients. So it's a lot of success. For those of you that don't know what this is, or just a very quick cartoon, actually have a valve that's squeezed onto a balloon catheter that's advanced through the femoral artery and then up the aorta, over the diseased aortic valve, and when it's in place, a balloon is inflated, it pushes aside the diseased valve and leaves a beating heart valve in its place. And this is an alternative to your chest being cut open, heart stopped, heart cut open, diseased heart valve cut out, new one sewn in, put back together, which is also an extremely successful procedure, but pretty tough on the patient. So we took a very deliberate approach, an awful lot of clinical work that started with the first 25 patients that only had a month or two to live and studied them, and then 50 patients, and then 100 patients at 3 centers, and then 500 patients that led to a CE mark, and then a registry in Europe, and then finally pivotal studies in the US, and the drumbeat continues to build the evidence in the clinical case that supports trying this kind of crazy procedure that, you know, has certainly risks to it. When you're messing around with a heart valve, it is life and death. You don't have second chances at this, and so you have to get it right. We're fortunate we went through a clinical trial that was a painful clinical trial, very, very tough stuff. Think about this. I mean, patients got this randomized. You either got best medical management or you got a transcatheter heart valve for a very sick group of patients, right? The reason it was such a tough trial is 50% of those that were in the control group were dead at 1 year. And so these patients knew it. They knew that they had a death sentence if they didn't get the new technology, and it was tough for everybody involved to actually implement this. But the great news is it made great science, right? And there were a lot of things that got learned from this trial. 4 New England Journal of Medical articles came out that said, hey, a new standard for these critically ill group of patients. And in addition to that, within the trial, we measured quality of life, and there was a substantial difference in quality of life. And this is one that's not typically measured in medicine, not nearly as often as we ought to, and it's considered almost soft science by the FDA. They really don't even want to hear about it very much. CMS is quite interested in it, but FDA not so much. Talk to me about the quality of life of these patients. The finding from David Cohen, the one that I find most remarkable, he said 1 year patients experienced both cardiovascular and physical health benefits with a physical improvement roughly comparable to a 10-year reduction in life, right? Big deal. And it made sense. I mean, physicians that looked at these patients would tell you, well, of course, these were strong ventricles that were pumping against heart valves that were closed, and all of a sudden when you open those valves, you had blood rushing to the brain and organs like it hasn't for years. Of course these people felt a lot better, and they behaved in a different way. And the other thing that we studied during this was how much it cost. And this was, this is an expensive valve system in some people's eyes, although when you think about how much research is involved, it's a different equation. But within this first group of patients, this partner B cohort, what the calculation said, and this is sort of a UK-style calculation, where they actually value a year of life or a quality year of life. It was around $50,000 to add a year of life with this procedure, which made it kind of comparable to some common other therapies. Not nearly as cost-effective as an aspirin, much better deal than an LVAD, but for first time out of the blocks for a procedure that wasn't well refined, not bad. And so we had this very fortunate set of circumstances, and this hasn't happened many times in my career. I don't know if it's happened to you very often. We actually have the triple win, where you have clinical effectiveness, quality of life improvement, and cost effectiveness. It doesn't happen often, but if you'd like something to be really big, it really helps if you have all three. You can certainly have a successful device with one of the three or two of the three, but it's more successful if you could check all the boxes. It's not simple, and it takes a little bit of good fortune along the way, and you also have to go out and collect the evidence and measure it and be able to back that up. So this field has still been moving, and we're fortunate the field seems to be getting better and better. We're not experiencing failures. We're experiencing better and better results, and as physicians improve their skills, as patient selection gets better, and as devices get better, it looks as though it's improving all the time. And so I consider this still a very young field with a big opportunity for improvement, and the best is yet to come. I think in some ways we're in a golden age for heart valves that who knows what's possible in the future. So our approach to innovation has been pretty straightforward. Maybe it's not for everybody. I mean, certainly we start with patient needs, and and patient preferences, it's really helpful to have the patients really want to pull. It matters. We invest very heavily in R&D. We prioritize what we're going to do, but we pour the coals to R&D. We spend well over 15%, 16% plus of our sales in R&D. We engage in a lot of partnerships, so we work very closely with physician groups. We work very closely with the FDA and with CMS and with pretty much everybody in this broader community that has a stake in this. And we invest a lot of time, and we listen, and we try our best to be able to satisfy the requirements that people are interested in. And finally, we go and generate that evidence. And this is where it's a little challenging. If you're a small guy that drew something on the back of a napkin and started something in the garage, the idea of generating this kind of evidence is not simple, right? It's a big deal. It makes it a big bill. We probably invested $1 billion to be able to bring this technology to the marketplace. Big numbers. You can get there, but it takes some patience, and it takes some investment to be able to get there. And it tends to discourage people from taking on smaller innovations, right? We used to do a lot of smaller things. Gee, can't you make that just a little easier to use? Can't you make it a little simpler? Can't you make it a little softer? Those kind of things, and we could go and sell them in the past and maybe get a little bit more for them. Those days really are over, which a little bit is sad because so much of medtech innovation has been iterative, right? We get a lot of feedback from physicians, and we constantly incorporate that feedback and give them better and better tools. Now it almost takes a bigger push to be able to do that. Now there's other approaches. The Fogarty Institute does something very different. He said, wow, that's ridiculous. It costs too much. What if we get some bright people and we put some mentors around them and we embed them right inside a hospital so that we can move through the process of identifying opportunities, iterating the designs, prototyping, and moving into the clinical setting, get some feedback, iterate, and do that more cost effectively. Straight from Tom, right? For us, innovation's all about patients and not about patents. So a different approach, maybe Tom will talk about that a little bit later. So there it is in a nutshell. In the 60s, 2 months and $1,800, right, for that Fogarty catheter to come to the marketplace, and transcatheter heart valve, 9 years and about $1 billion. So then or now, it's not a close call, right? I think we all know the answer to that. You didn't need to come to the Fogarty lecture to get that figured out. But the thing that is the driving force for all this is what patients want. Patients are such a powerful force in this, more than ever before. Their voices are being heard more than ever before. We've had this incredible opportunity to actually get to know some of these patients whose lives we've touched, and man, they'll tell you, I'm not done, right? I'd like some answers. Bring it, right? And they're serious about it, and they're gaining more and more power along the way, and I believe it's the ultimate hope, and it's what's going to keep alive this hunger for innovation to make it better and better and better, and I don't expect that to stop. So I purposely made this talk a little shorter because what I wanted to do was to bring a panel up here and talk about some of this from some very different perspectives. And I want to actually introduce that panel. Why don't we set up some chairs? We've got Dr. Fogarty himself, and Tom needs no introduction. Fortunately, I see Rita Redberg just joined us. Rita just got off an airplane. Thanks for making it, Rita. She's a cardiologist and a professor of medicine and director of the Women's Cardiovascular Services at UCSF. She's done that since 1990. She's currently the editor of JAMA, Internal Medicine, and has spearheaded the journal's new focus on healthcare reform. Her research interests are all around public policy, and I see her often in many settings. Rita's really become a friend, and she's a voice of of honesty through this debate. When some of guys like me get kind of carried away of how fantastic medical technology is, Rita's not afraid to bring us back down to earth, and it's great to have you here for this discussion. I also want to welcome Dr. David Feinberg. He's the president of the UCLA Health System. So all aspects of the UCLA Health System, which includes the UCLA Hospital System, the Ronald Reagan Medical Center. It goes on and on. It's a big system. It's a very successful system. And Tom is a very accomplished administrator. And one of the things that I love about Tom in terms of not just running a great academic medical center, but he also really cares about patients. He's one of these guys that actually goes out and sits on the edge of the bed with patients every single day to try and stay tuned into what it's all about that his center really does. And so it's great to have him with us. Tom, why don't you come on up, soapbox and all.
I'm not sure I'd like to be between two academics.
I'm sure we'll hear more about that.
Looks like we got you out of the pool.
All right. So I tried to be a little thought-provoking. So I made a bunch of statements during the talk about the work of the medical device industry and what positions you believe in. The innovative technology, does it help solve problems, or is it the driver of cost? Okay? What do you think? Are we the solution to the cost problem, or are we a big part of the cost problem? Who wants to start? David, you want to?
Sure.
You want to jump in?
So it's a pleasure to be here and to be surrounded by such smart people and with great histories. But I think the answer to the question, Mike, is it's part of the puzzle. You know, when a patient is told you have cancer or you have heart disease, there's a lot of pain and suffering that takes place from the disease itself. There's pain and suffering that takes place from the treatment. And then there's pain and suffering that takes place from just being sick. I mean, it's a hassle. You don't just walk in and get one of these valves overnight, right? You got to call. You got to meet with a doctor. You got to take time off work. You got to explain to your family. So when we talk about innovation, I think we need innovation around treatment. We need innovation around diagnosis. And we also need innovation. And I think we've sort of lost our way because we got so interested in the technology that in the United States we lost our way about how to focus on really caring for people. Because if you strip it all down, why we're here and why all of you are coming up with really cool devices, I mean, really just people caring for other people. And I think that having the best tools is absolutely necessary, but far from sufficient. So I want our docs at UCLA to have the latest and greatest, but I also want them to be able to sit down on the bed and listen to the patients. I think the best tool we have, with all due respect, is not the Fogarty catheter, but it's our ears. And it's our ability to connect with patients in a way that's dignified and deliver care that's safe and you know, the care we'd want for our own family. So to me, innovation is absolutely crucial, but it's not just innovation around medical technology.
Rita, Tom, what do you think? Part of the problem or part of the solution?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to be here. Fogarty lecture and a great biodesign program, and I know a lot of prospective innovators are here. Certainly, medical technology has been fantastic, and we're all, as a cardiologist, I'm certainly grateful for all of the advances in medical technology. But I also do think it has been, we spend $2.7 trillion in the U.S. on healthcare, way more than anywhere else in the world, and our outcomes are not as good as anywhere else in the world. There are lots of places where people live better and live longer in many ways, and some of that is certainly due to technology that is not perhaps used properly, used appropriately, or not tested before it got on the market. So while there certainly is great advances like we talked about, you also mentioned there are problems. And what I like to focus on is just to ensure that particularly these more high-risk devices get on the market, and particularly implanted ones with cancer valves and other problems, that we have really good evidence of safety and effectiveness, and that we continue to follow that post-market. That's really a observation.
Thanks, Rita. Tom, you got anything on this one?
Yeah, innovation is the solution. but it's not the only solution. I mean, where we are in terms of cost is multifactorial. Some of it is patients' fault. They expect too much. Some of it's industry's fault. They haven't designed with cost in mind. Some of it is physicians' faults. So it's multifactorial. I would propose that some of it is FDA's fault. When you spend $500,000 on an iterative change, that's bullshit. You don't have to do that. You do not have to do that. I'm absolutely convinced you don't have to do that. But we have a culture that is developed within inside the FDA that they do control the patient's life. They do it by saying it's too risky. It's not safe enough. You know, sometimes that's true. But nobody, I don't care who you are, they don't like to hurt patients. If you're a doctor and you do that, your practice will go away. It's just the way it is. They basically don't want to do it because they're there and they understand while they're there. Most of them, it's there to help patients. There are different ways to help patients. One of the most important ways is by understanding what a patient wants. And I agree, we don't always listen, particularly surgeons. No, that's true, and I know you're a cardiologist. Maybe you're second in line, but no.
This is turning out to be a good panel right from the start. I'm liking this.
No, but I do think really, whether it's a service, whether it's payment, whether it's devices, whether it's rehabilitation, innovation, will lead to improved care with less cost if we handle it appropriately. We haven't been appropriately handling it.
All right, let me switch gears. So I threw out this premise of, so when do you measure that it's an effective innovation or an effective treatment, right? We say, okay, there's this moment that it happens, right? Or, you know, gee, right after or within a day. Or there's this, look at the 30-day sort of maybe the time that people are actually within the hospital or shortly thereafter, or a lifetime. Right now, we measure something pretty discrete, right? And we propose, gee, is it possible to think about measuring larger and larger time frames? How should we think about this? Do you have any views? Anybody want to jump into that? Rita, you want to start?
Yeah, clearly it's a trade-off, and it depends a little bit on how risky is your device. Like I said, is it internal to be implanted? And is it something that for which there are no other treatments, or do we have a lot of other treatments and we have, from a patient's point of view, a little more time then, because there are alternatives. And so factoring in all of those, I also think that, you know, even for the devices that clearly need data, they're risky and kind of new, it's possible to shorten the pre-market side if you're doing the post-market. So you can, you know, kind of not spend as much time on the pre-market, but then after it is approved or you've done it in patients, just make sure you're following those patients and looking at the data and then acting on the data. And I think that's what's really.
Okay. Others?
Well, I think our time frame is completely off. So, I mean, if you listen to patients, patients never say to you, hi, I don't want to be readmitted in 30 days. Patients don't say, you know, I want to make sure I get an aspirin or get up to the lab in 90 minutes. What patients say to you is, I want my third grade daughter who's suicidal back at school. I want my wife who has breast cancer back at work. I want my elderly parent who just fell and cracked their head open in the middle of the night, living in a safe place. That's what patients want. And I think we have to measure everything we do, not only against that scale, that's the voice of the patient, but also if we keep spending like this, that means we can't build roads and we can't fix the schools. So I think there's a moral hazard in thinking that we can continue to increase the cost of medical care without the subsequent sacrifices that we make. Because these days, there's just a finite amount of resources that we have. So I think the measurement from a patient standpoint is, and I think your last slide showed it, Mike, is, when am I back playing golf? I mean, that's the measurement. That's what they're coming for. And I think we've been way too myopic, and we're getting better, but nobody really cares about 30-day readmissions except hospital administrators, and that's not how patients think. Patients don't want to be in the hospital in the first place. Actually, most patients would tell you they would never want one of these devices. Really what they'd want to do if they ate right and took care of themselves and exercised and didn't smoke and didn't drink and didn't shoot each other with guns and wore their seatbelts, they would never even need to come to us. So I think that most patients would enjoy never being inflicted with any kind of medical device.
Thank you, David. Tom, you got anything to add to this
Do you
one?
think that's bullshit too, Tom?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
okay. I just wanted to say that.
99% of stuff is bullshit, but yours is not. Okay. No, red wine is a help. That's absolutely right. Patients want a lot of things, and everybody wants a lot of things, but I think we have to be realistic. We haven't been. It used to be that patients, they tell you, I want to live longer. They don't say that much anymore. They say, I want to live better. We have to respect that request. And I think often we just ignore it, and it's been a mistake. So we as physicians, keeping a patient alive too long is not the proper thing to do for the patient or the family. So we got to change the way we're thinking as physicians, and we haven't done that very well. I do think there's I agree with you, cost care in the United States is too expensive and it can't be sustained. And our improvement in technology is not as good as it used to be. We are behind many of the foreign countries in technology related to healthcare. And once again, that's all multifactorial. But at the end of the day, I do think it's important for us all to understand what we're trying to do. And sometimes we forget we're there to take care of patients. We're not there to write papers. Some are good, and they should be written. But that's not the sole objective. We're not there to get grants. They're good, but it can't be the sole objective. There's a lot of things we're required to do as physicians, and some do some things better than others. And we ought to allow those physicians to do those things better. I have not heard or seen a technology that was introduced in the marketplace on the sole efforts of a physician. It does not happen. You need industry. So we've casted industry in many situations as an evil empire. They're not evil. They may be evil at times, and there are some bad people, but are any attorneys in this room? Casey. Bob Brownell. See, I can smell him. No, but I do think we got to get together and think the same way, and I really believe that's what the FDA is trying to do. But they have their own issues with inside. They got their own rules and regulations. They're kind of like bosses without having authority. And that's truly what's going on. So I don't know how to resolve these things, but I'm telling you, we're not going to resolve them by fighting with the FDA. We have to convince them that we're all trying to do the same thing. FDA, safety and efficacy. Good physicians, it's safety and efficacy. Same with industry, it's safety and efficacy. Nobody wants to be splattered with a bad result. So I think that we can work together. It's just that there's been cultures that have developed that make it very difficult.
All right, so let me switch gears on you again. So David, this one's for you. So I made a provocative statement that China is going to be the #2 medtech country in the world by 2020, and that they're going to be big-time innovators, if you will, or at least producers of medical technology. So now a device comes to UCLA, and there are some really bright guys that did almost a really nice copy of somebody's device, and they're ready to sell it to you for a lower price, much lower price, maybe half, maybe a third. It's got FDA approval. What do you do with something like that if you're in your role?
We buy it.
No question.
Actually, what we do is try to negotiate and even get a discount further on that one.
Actually, I've noticed that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, we're trying to heal humankind. I'm training doctors for tomorrow. I'm trying to come up with new discoveries. I mean, it's almost God's work, and so we want to make sure that we take, you know, we're where the rubber meets the road with patients, and so we want to make sure that we give them the best deal possible.
Fair enough. Pretty clear. Good.
Mike, I don't want to throw stones at everybody here.
What's new?
You know, you mentioned something, but and you talked about cost, but I have not seen medical device companies really go after low-cost devices, nor have I seen hospitals develop really low-cost. For example, I'm on the board of a company, Novartis, that happens to have a division that makes implantable lenses. But there's a clinic in India called the Aravind Clinic that will do cataracts for, I don't know, $100 or $75. Now, they do make their own lens and probably aren't paying patent royalties, but even if they did, you could develop focus factories, hospitals, but you don't because it costs you. Because you have to pay for your emergency room and all that. So you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem because you need the margin to generate the price of your stock. And Tom needs to be able to expand his winery.
Oh, bullshit. You know,
The question is, could we, and I have no idea whether it's possible, could we in this country say, okay, we're really going to focus on developing high-quality, low-cost surfaces with using devices? Or is that just a non-starter between the FDA and Casey McGlynn and the lawyers?
Well, I'll give you my 2 cents. We could focus on low-cost devices. We're not going to make big investments in research and development. We would keep it. It would be a skinny little effort, right? We stay out of any serious regulatory hurdles. We don't do anything that really changes medicine at all, because if we did, then we're into great big cha-chas, big evidence collection and so forth. So I'm not going to collect any evidence because that's very expensive. That's millions of dollars. And so what I can do is I can make something very inexpensive, and I can give it to David and say, and he'll say, well, how do I know whether this works? I'm going to say, the price is right. Well, it's what it comes down to. I mean, do you want to know that it's safe? Do you want to know it's been well tested? Do you want to see the clinical evidence? Do you want to see the quality of life evidence? Do you want to see the cost effectiveness evidence and so forth? Or say, no, I don't need all that. Just give me something that's low price. It's a different model.
But the other thing about those models that we are trying, so some of those hospitals in India can do hearts, and I'm a psychiatrist, so I apologize if I don't speak the right way. And if
what
I'm
other problem do you have?
Cardiovascular. So those hospitals, those focus factories, do something fascinating, and we are experimenting with it. They bring the families in the beginning of treatment, before treatment, and they teach them to do the nursing care. So the nursing care is done by the family. The food is delivered by the family. I mean, if you look at our cost structure, at UCLA, we spend $60 million a month on payroll. So, you know, labor is really, really expensive. And if we look at other industries in the U.S., airlines or whatever, they've made us do the work. And I think in healthcare, that is an innovation that we can take from these places in other countries where they've used the labor piece of really the family, which is a great way to provide the care, and it could be at home. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the hospital.
Go for it.
Counter that problem. Yeah, I think you can certainly do innovative and low-cost devices, and I think you're doing a lot of work here in terms of design schools. But I also think about the toothpaste that is poisoning a lot of Chinese. I think about how why we had to rebuild part of the Great Bridge because they're cured or something, or they actually, it's just very limited to my understanding of this. And so there are things we can't skip on, and that's a history. Also, the very Chinese science.
So Rita, as long as you've got the floor, let me ask a question of you. So you hear us in Medtech talk about how the hurdles in FDA are too high, right? And how the timelines are too long, but then you're also observant of the things that go wrong when they get in the marketplace. How do you think about that? How do you respond? Well, what do you say to those out there that are complaining that the hurdles are too high and the timelines are too long?
Well, certainly, it depends on your perspective. I'm a doctor, I take care of patients. So I'm thinking it from the point of view, am I going to feel comfortable telling my patients, I recommend this device and they should go for it. And to do that, I want vigorous patient assessment. Certainly if I was a company or venture capitalist, then I'm thinking about the bottom line. And certainly the only thing I would think about and understand what is how quickly can I get this device on the market so it's the longer it takes, more money it costs me. I think the FDA has to be, balancing innovation, which we want to do, and safety, because you don't want to put unsafe devices on the market in the U.S. You don't want to put unsafe devices, and you don't want to speed things up and run into that. And as you know, you mentioned in your lecture, there have been a number of instances that have been planned, even for the iterative process that you mentioned, Tom. And I understand that devices, there are lots of little changes you can make, and they always seem like changes are getting better, and you want to do it, and you don't want to wait. But I also think of examples like the ICU lead, where they doing supplements, there's no clinical trials that were tested, they got thinner and thinner. Well, now there's several recalls, in fact, in hundreds of thousands of Americans who have these ICU leads implanted, and there's some deaths associated with the ICU leads, and they were all iterative changes. They just made it a little thinner and a little thinner and a little thinner. So I think that we really have to be sure that I want to feel comfortable with my patient in the life that I recommend. I know that based on research.
All right, I'm going to switch gears again. David, in the world that we're living in now, okay, we just got a chance to talk about the fact that, boy, wouldn't it, that when you're out there buying devices and buying technology, there's a level of sophistication that you're bringing to it. I'm assuming that UCLA would be quite a sophisticated buyer, right? So you have the balance of this great clinical results. You try and think about patients and the quality and what they really want. You try and think about trying to make the economics of a academic medical center work and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about how you end up thinking about those new things that come over the transom, some of which may be appealing and which ones aren't appealing? How do you weigh that out?
So we don't invest in devices. We invest in people. And I'm going to say this for effect, but it's pretty accurate. When someone comes in my office, one of our docs, and they want some new gizmo, I've already decided, and I don't even hear what the gizmo is, because some of those docs I'm always going to say yes to. And some of them I'm never going to say yes to. And
That's a good policy.
it is.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
So we bet on people. We bet on people. We want the brightest and the best people. I'm looking for people with passion, with integrity, and humility. Because some of the stuff we're asking them to do is really on the edge, right? So if you're an EP guy, which always freaks me out, you're putting some guy, into a fatal arrhythmia and then figuring out how to fix it. I want guys that are humble, that are hungry, that are passionate about what they do. And when they come in, the answer is yes. And that's how we invest. Because at my level, there's no way to know whether your marketing slides make sense or not. I can't do it. I mean, you got to push that down into the organization.
Makes great sense. One for you, Tom. You saw, Edwards' big investment in transcatheter heart valves, ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah.
Who else would do that other than Edwards? You said that's not a sustainable model. You said, I don't like any of the models that are out there for doing medtech innovation. And so you created the Fogarty Institute with some ideas in mind. What are you thinking? What are the principles that are behind that?
Well, the principles, like you said, we invest in people. Invest in people, hopefully, that we know, And we're able to do that some of the time, but sometimes we don't know them, but we feel we want to help them. And we do that. And the Institute is a not-for-profit, and it's working. It's not working as quickly or as well as we want. But my philosophy is you think big but start small. Those who start big usually end up not being very successful. So we're feeling our way along. We're learning a lot, but it seems to be working at this point in time. And we don't exactly know what we're doing, but we're figuring it out as we go. And we made some mistakes that we won't make again. So every time something doesn't work, we analyze why. It most often relates to people. And so that's our philosophy. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but we think a lot of these people have good concepts. They're honest, credible people, and they deserve a chance, which they're not getting in this current environment. The VCs are no help. They've all gone underground. So where do you get the money from? Well, you get it from places we never used to look to. But usually what's happening now, we start off with friends and family. Then we try to reinforce that with some additional money from what we call angels that sometimes turn out to be devils. But you got to try, and that we're learning. Industry, they say, is more and more interested in early stage technology. But I don't think they've really demonstrated that in my experience, and I know most of those people pretty well because I've dealt with them over the years. They say it, but they don't really follow it up with fact. So it's a big problem. Yeah. And so not-profit, we think there are some people that understand it will help us.
Okay. Thank you. So question for all three of the panelists. Each of you have talked about patients and how that's at the center of what you care about most. But my observation about patients are it's not that easy to get the voice of the patient. They're not that organized, they're not that sophisticated, they're not that articulate. So if we're saying, oh yeah, listen to the patient, how do you do that? Do you have any ideas on how you listen to the patient? Any suggestions? Anybody want to start?
Well, yeah, I'll start. Not that I'm right or wrong, but patients are a powerful force if you can engage them. Part of the problem is it's very difficult to engage them. I talk to my patients when I used to take care of patients that I tried to make them understand what was going on with medicine in the United States. And, they're pretty understanding. They do understand very often that, gee, I wish things were better. Some of our own physicians don't understand how much trouble we're in. But I do think, I'm absolutely convinced of it, that things will continue to go offshore in this current environment and the current culture that we've created in the United States. You cannot afford to innovate in the United States. You cannot afford to innovate in the United States. It's the absolute truth. It's going to continue until we all change our ways. That includes the FDA and CMS. Current time, if you with a class 3 device, you have to get through FDA and CMS. It could take 14 years. By the time you do that, that technology is dated. So what we're doing now is not sustainable. And this is not just bullshit. It's the absolute truth. I know industry. I know people who have done this, and they won't do it anymore. You can't create.
And this, my friends, is the Fogarty lecture. I've gotten this lecture before. No, it's right, and I understand, and you're passionate about it, and I'm not arguing that you're wrong. But what I was trying to get at is this whole question about how the heck do you listen to patients? Where's that going?
So we don't do anything without the patient literally in the room. So when we have management retreats, leadership retreats, we have patients there. And even the patient that doesn't speak up keeps us honest. Because we can't have that back and forth where we talk, well, this is how we do it, when there's somebody that's keeping us honest in the room. At UCLA, we do more organ transplants than any hospital in the United States. We invented the PET scan. We diagnosed the first case of AIDS. We came up with the nicotine patch. We came up with, I guess this is an innovation, the coil when you get an aneurysm. But what makes us most proud is our patient satisfaction. So we're the best among 6,000 hospitals in the United States on which you refer us to a friend and rate us on a scale of 1 to 10. And we got a lot of notoriety around that. And what I say, or what we say to our team, is that makes us the cream of the crop. Because to get 99th percentile patient satisfaction in our industry means 85 out of 100 people gave us the top box score. So in any other industry, manufacturing, 15 defects out of 100, you're terrible. So we're the best of a very, very bad industry. And we need to completely change how we do things to get those next 15 patients. Because really, by definition, they're regular people. They're moms and dads and coworkers and brothers and sisters. And our industry has completely lost. It is a hassle to be a patient. It is. We couldn't make it more difficult. We changed how we answered the phone July 1 at UCLA. We answer the phone now. Hello, this is UCLA Health. It's a real person. Would you like to be seen today? Okay, so we offer same-day appointments for everything. In the Department of Medicine over the last 3 weeks, I think we've seen 12,000 same-day appointments. I mean, so when you talk about how backward we've been in doing, and it's not even easy to come into Westwood and park and make it into one of our buildings. So we really shouldn't, we should say, hello, this is UCLA Health. Would you like me to see you today at work, at school, at your home? And we got to change our waiting rooms to either clinical space or places where doctors wait for patients. We are so, as an industry, provider-centric that there's no way we can make this transition without the patient literally saying, why do you do it that way? Wait, let me tell you my story. How about this? And that, I think, is absolutely crucial to make this transition.
Rita, what do you think? How do you listen to patients? What's your advice?
Certainly, in the office, it's easy to listen to patients, especially if you have the time. And of course, everyone complains they don't have enough time. But I think there's nothing really more important than talking to your patient and making that time, because the only way to really figure out what's going on with patients. I mean, at the FDA level, I think it's a little harder because every patient is different. And also, as you were alluding to, in the doctor-patient relationship, it's very lopsided. We have the internal team, we really control the flow. But what I think we can do a lot better is what's now called shared decision-making, but I really think it exists to be more participation. We're talking about devices. There have been several studies now published on stents. We all know husbands are stable and besides very several trials that show medical therapy, stents, there is very different fatal events or heart attack. But the studies over the last 15 years, we talked to patients, and they're all saying they got a stent because it was going to save their life or prevent heart attack. And so, I mean, in that sense, I think we need to do a lot better with talking to patients. And it's not just interventional cardiology, but everything. In order, like you said, there are patients that are interested in quality of life, so they will do anything to improve their quality of life. So they have, in order to make that decision, we have to tell them, this is your chance to do a lot better. And 5 out of 100 people will not get better, and people will get better, and people will have a heart attack or a stroke, all kinds of things. And I think we really need to be having that conversation with people.
More honesty, more forthcoming in the risks. Yeah. Okay, why don't I toss it out to the audience? Anybody want to ask any questions out there? I've got a few more that I can do, but if there is anybody that got something that they'd like to raise, we're happy to take that. Anybody? We're a little shy. Oh, okay. That was the, yeah.
The question, I don't know if people heard, how we are preparing for Obamacare. We're getting ready one patient at a time. So we're expanding throughout Southern California. In Los Angeles, when you listen to patients, the 101 corridor, that's like Calabasas, Woodland Hills, Thousand Oaks. Because of traffic patterns, people won't drive more than 4 hours for primary care. So 4 miles, 4 miles.
4 miles.
Sorry, 4 miles, which is 4 hours. So same thing. So we've opened primary care offices every 4 miles. And so we now go up toward, into Ventura County and down into Orange County, literally every 4 miles. We're have for an academic medical center, an incredible breadth of primary care, literally hundreds and hundreds of clinician educators providing primary care. We've been doing risk-based contracting and have a couple 100,000 patients that we're at risk for at some level, some fully capitated, some with a shared savings. We're at risk for our employees, and we'll be going out in a year with an insurance product to market. So to prepare for healthcare reform, we really believe it's a population-based play, and that the reason we're in business at UCLA, no different than Stanford, we need to make money.
I hope you're not that big.
We need to make money to support our teaching and research. And we think as this change goes from a volume-based business to a value-based business, we need to get big and have scale so that we can have enough money to support the training of the doctors and coming up with the discoveries.
Another question? Yes.
So I left med school 4 months ago to start a company, and I came from Detroit. And I've been totally fascinated by and it's such a contrast to memory research. And I was just curious, as a concept of innovation, how medical centers are going to start responding to smaller, newer, startups like my own, and then the corporations in particular, and how large corporations that have $9 billion start to be receptive to ideas from young people and less resourced.
Who wants to start?
We've got a whole innovation center that works just on healthcare delivery innovation, brings in people like you, and we have it kind of walled off from our regular business because we think otherwise our business will beat it up. It won't work, it doesn't work. So we accept it, and we're trying to innovate in that way.
I don't know that there's any two big companies that are exactly alike. In our case, we're pretty focused on a few things: structural heart disease and our critical care technology. And so we tend not to look at things that are outside what we're pretty focused at and pretty good at. And then within that, we love all new ideas. But there is a prioritization process. And so if our folks look at it and they say, wow, that's a fantastic idea, you get a much better reception than if they don't think it's a fantastic idea. So, getting to the right people obviously is key, but for most companies of size, it helps if you can move and make some progress and be able to have some kind of evidence that you can talk about other than a raw idea. For a big company to get into an idea that really has no evidence, boy, it would have to be just an unbelievable shocker, and you'd have to be able to get some folks on board. Yes?
So I heard that Dr. Dev studied from India started in Los Angeles. He said within 5 years, computers will be doing second opinions on medical cases. And within 10 years, he's predicting that it will be a requirement to have second opinions. I'd love to hear what your friend has.
So would I.
Well, I think computers can be useful. I don't think I would personally endorse that, though. I mean, because medicine's an art and a science, and you can read everything and know everything, but you still have to know your patient, their values, what's important to them. There are a lot of things you cannot put into a computer, and it certainly handy to have up-to-date on all the laptops and have electronic health records to transmit things, but I don't think computers are going to give second opinions that can take into account all of the art and science that you need to make a good decision.
Any alternate views?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it'll happen way faster than that, and I think it makes sense, and I think there's way too much information out there for anybody these days. I mean, in the olden days, the doctor sat by the bedside and you waited till the fever broke. You didn't have much to do. And now there's so much to do and so much information that, 30% of our diagnoses are wrong. I mean, if we really talk about healthcare reform, we're not even diagnosing the people the right way. So I think it will be delivered via a human, and I think that human and healing connection is absolutely crucial, and the trust, and to be able to cry and to be able to ponder, but the data has to be provided by it. I think, and the crowdsourcing, I think you'll put your genome up and people will tell you what's going on, and I think the balance between all the information in the doctor and not in the patient, we've just seen that start to switch, and I think it's going to go like a hockey stick.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Yes.
What are your thoughts on coming up with flexible, sustainable research, innovations where the focus is on biomedical research and development, like for instance, for any radical innovation, you need a combination of unusual
Anybody? That's not the way you innovate, is it?
I have no idea what you said. I was listening too. I think that's part of the problem. I agree with you. I agree with the gentleman, not the lady. Is that okay? But no, I think a lot of these things are going to be done in different methodologies that we never conceived of. It's going to be done because of price. And I think very quick and early communication is part of the problem. You know, you go get 1 second opinion, or second opinion, and you get a third, and then you get a fourth. And it's predictable they're going to be pretty much the same until you get a hold of a charlatan. And then it's going to be different. Most of the time, not all the time. But so I think it's going to change.
All right, we got an anxious questioner here. Go. What's that?
David, you're very people-oriented in a room. You like folks, and so there's a question about reimbursement. Is there a way for where you're sitting in your environment to say, industry, solve these my problems? This is what the business is. And technology, you say, well, I don't think technology is going to solve it. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but if you can figure out the thing that would save UCLA $100 million for this, $100 million for this, and lob it to this group, come back to me here for 2 years, and this type of question, and then figure out the cost.
Well, I just would ask that you change the question and not say about my bottom line in UCLA. I mean, because that's not speaking for the patients. When I put my hat on running the health system, right, I want to do a lot of organ transplants because we make a lot of money on it, as opposed to what I want to do as a healer is save as many organs as possible. So there's an X Prize right now where that basically they want you to be able to use your iPhone for a mom at home at 2 in the morning to be able to diagnose her kid better than 10 board-certified doctors, and I think I'm pretty close on what the prize is. Hey, that would really help when we get the call from our sister-in-law and, you know, the 8-year-old is sick at home and it's 2 in the morning and you don't know what to do. I think that's what patients are looking for, that kind of technology. Or what can you do to make me worry less about my elderly parents at home? And how can you make it so they can live safely at home? I think those are the big ones. I mean, if those two things happen, it's really bad for my bottom line right now because the payment models and incentives haven't caught up for that, right? I make a lot of money when that fever spikes and the girl comes in or the elderly parent hits their head, or we do a dementia workup. But what can you do to keep people, and you said it, keep people living longer and better? I mean, I think that's what we're talking about. And then the big one for me is how do we change people's behavior? 99% of what we're talking about could be all go away with lifestyle changes. And how can technology help with that? Or how can devices help with that?
All right, I'm going to interject one last question, and this was sort of the big theme, right? So is this the golden age of innovation, right? So 50 years ago versus today, is medtech innovation slowly dying, or maybe better put, what should happen for medtech innovation to stay alive and well? Rita, you want to start us?
I do think it's the golden age for innovation because we're just smarter, we've got lots more resources. What should happen to keep it? I mean, I think just what we've been talking about, incubators, I mean, cross-fertilization of ideas across cultures, across institutions, across perspectives, and the continuous sort of quicker, cleverer ways to generate data, generate evidence when we need it, strengthening post-marketing, but continuing, incubators of ideas, so they just keep coming, we keep testing them, and, I think we're definitely in the golden age.
Tom?
We're in a golden age based on the technology that's available, also based on the enthusiasm of our patients to want better technology. I do not think we're in a golden age for getting any of that funded. That's the life, that's real, that's the point. And so when there's lack of money, you go where the money is. It ain't in the United States. It just ain't going to happen in the United States. I guarantee you, I'll bet any amount of money anybody in this room wants, unless we change our perspectives. That includes physicians, it includes the FDA, it includes CMS. If you put regular time together with the approval for reimbursement through CMS, it can take 12 years. That ain't going to work. By that time, the technology will be dated. It will. So, I mean, you got to face reality. And I think we're all putting our head in the sand and kind of espousing what we think should happen, and that's including me. But the difference between others and me, I'm always right.
I certainly have found that to be true.
I think we should-
David, what do you think?
I think we should end the Fogarty lecture with a Fogarty lecture.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, I think sustained applause says it all, but I wanted to add a note of thanks to Mike. Mike put a tremendous amount of thought together, put together a tremendous panel. I think not only the presentation, but the discussion that happened here and the follow-on that will be a great source of joy and hopefully a great source of innovation in the coming year. Mike, this you get to take home with you.
Thank you very much.
We've been giving Eagles away now for 15 years. The whole idea of new ideas taking flight, fitting tribute for this 15th Fogarty lecture. Thank you all very much. We can ship that to you. Really well done. Really